The heart produces opioids, and we practice sustaining heart coherence. We want to get so good at doing it with our eyes closed, we can do it with our eyes open, right?
So when you feel loved, you feel free.
Right, and not only free, but you're totally okay with everybody.
Yeah, I love everything. Yeah,
like, you see beauty. When you're in your heart, you see beauty, and our students' oxytocin levels sometimes are 200 times normal.
Wow.
That's not a little love. That's a lot of love. And at the same time, we have people whose amplitudes of heart coherence are 3 times higher, 200% higher than normal. That's not a little love. That's like your heart turning on like an engine of love.
Right.
Just like blood goes into the sexual organs, and when they're aroused and it's engorged, that's a consciousness, that's an intention, it's got a mind. Imagine that kind of intensity moving into your heart, and nitric oxide is released, and the blood moves into your heart, the arteries open up, and you feel this incredible amount of love, right? So there's endogenous opiates released from that when the brain is resonating in holism and resonance and coherence, and there's autonomic regulation. The body moves out of the past and the pain goes. So the side effect of all of this is natural opioids being created. We saw in our our fMRIs, we saw an area of the brain actually get larger in advanced meditators. And so we took the blood, and in the blood, there are factors in terms of information in the blood that causes nerve cells, we have the data, to go crazy and grow. Like, there's factors in there that are pro-growth and pro-life. Take the plasma of a mother who's lactating, who's coming to our event, and we look at her breast milk, and we lacerate epithelial cells. And if you just lacerate epithelial cells and you let them go and you look at them 48 hours later, you may see a couple new cells growing in there. We took the breast milk of these women before they came to the week long. We put their breast milk in the presence of that laceration. Yeah, we saw some cells. There's some healing factors in the breast milk. When they went through 7 days and we put the breast milk on the lacerated cells, 48 hours of completely recovered.
It's like super milk.
Super milk. In other words, there's information in the milk that's pro-life.
Come on.
That's pro-growth.
That's amazing.
Healing.
Wow.
And that's what's being transmitted to an infant whose mother is in an environment where she's in love. And love is wholeness, or whatever you want to call that. And so we brought in language specialists, because there's a language of transformation. We're working with the University of Central Oklahoma. We got the world's leading language specialists on transformation. And we've studied hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of people that have healed. And we're looking at the language that they talk about in their healing process. And we've discovered that when they have those big moments, there's a couple things that happen. They have a very strong feeling. And the first feeling they have is very somatic. They'll say, like, it was like every atom in my body was vibrating. I felt like my heart turned on like an engine. My heart exploded. My head blew off. I felt like my body was filled with light. Very somatic. And then the other part is very emotional. And the emotion is ineffable. Like, they don't have the language to describe whatever that was. And the reason I love this, Louis, more than anything else is because when you hit that, you stop looking for it outside of you. And you start realizing it's always been within you. And that's when the love affair begins, right?
Gosh. With yourself.
With yourself, with the divine. And it's always been with you. You want to hide the divine in a human being? Put it within them. They'll look everywhere else for it, right?
Right.
So very somatic, very emotional, and it's ineffable. But the only way that people can describe it is with metaphor. Because metaphor is like using what's known to understand an unknown, because in the circuitry of their brain, in three-dimensional reality, this is information that's coming from beyond three-dimensional reality. There's no language for that. There's a language for everything that you know. So the only thing you can do is you can try to explain an unknown by using lots of knowns. And that's kind of a Hebbian law. Get enough circuits firing. If I said, receptor sites look like craters on the moon, but they're not craters. They're more like flowers. When flowers have antennas, in the center is a kaleidoscope, and the chemical fits in like a lock and key and turns a kaleidoscope. But like dropping a pebble in the water, the antenna gets the signal, and the DNA unzips like unzipping a zipper. So you're using all these metaphors to help someone understand something unknown called a receptor site, right? So when people have these transcendental experiences with energy and information beyond their senses, they don't have the language to describe and the language specialist came to the event in, Jeff, he's such a great guy. He came to the event in Marco Island in September of last year, and he had a moment. He had a big moment. In fact, it was so big, he wanted to get on a Zoom call with me, and we were laughing so hard because he's a language specialist.
He couldn't explain it.
He did not have the language to explain what happened. So check the microbiome out. We started looking at the microbiome, and I'll stop here because I can go on. We look at the microbiome. Now, you know this. You're a health-minded guy. You want to change the microbiome? Okay. Stop eating sugar, stop eating starch, no alcohol, don't eat too late.
Smoking.
No smoking, take your probiotics, all of that. And maybe in 6 months, you may see a few different, like a phylum of microbiomes changing. At the end of 7 days, there are such dramatic changes in the microbiome that our AI, are computers that have algorithms to predict diseases, say diseases like anxiety or cancer or PTSD. The machine learns when a person has PTSD, there's a very specific microbiome they have, very similar for cancer, very similar for PTSD. Okay, so you can predict more than 70, 80%, 90% when a person has a health condition by looking at their microbiome. At the end of 7 days, the AI, the machine learning couldn't predict it. The algorithm couldn't predict it at all. It couldn't tell if the person had the cancer any longer. And there were so many probiotic microorganisms that were upregulated for inflammation, to reduce cancer, for cancer response to treatment. 7 days? Wow. 7 days. And I said to one of our research team, well, what do you think it is? And one of the researchers said, I don't know. And the other researcher looked at me and he said, they're not the same person. If they were the same person, they'd have the same microbiome. And in 7 days, they're a different person, different microbiome. But the microbiomes that are being created, the competition for healthy microbiomes are squashing the microbiomes that control a lot of diabetes and inflammation and cancers. And so we showed this data to one of our neuroscientists on the team, and she was like, excuse me, she couldn't even compute how all of these changes would have such a dramatic effect on the microbiome. So I want to be very clear that, number one, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that meditation somehow has an effect on the COVID virus or on cancer regulation. I'm not saying that. The data's saying that. And I keep telling the scientists, I can't believe this is the truth. I can't believe it. And when you see a scientist running a study, 5 times over and over again, I love it.
Trying to disprove.
They're changing their belief right in the moment. Like there's, a drug study at its best is about 25% effective, like 1 out of 4 people. 25%.
We'll see some type of change.
You'll see some type of change. And it's usually an intervention that takes place over a period of time. Our data is 75 to 100%.
Wow.
Their nervous system is manufacturing a pharmacy of chemicals that work better than any drug. And now, after all these years, I can sit back and say, you can't call this pseudoscience any longer. You can't call it pseudoscience. And I think when we have great testimonials, stories of transformation. I was just telling you before we started.
Yeah.
Every event I go to, somebody stands on the stage and blows my mind. We had 3 events, one in Basel, one in Barcelona, and then one in Cancun. At every event, someone stood on the stage and just told a story, and I was shaking my head. A tumor that's 9.5 inches in size on a kidney, that's metastasized all through his organs, causing his lungs to swell with fluid. No, can't do the surgery. I mean, he's in rough shape. 8 months. 8 months. He never missed a day. He goes to the doctor, there's nothing there. Nothing there. Like, I don't know, like, we have such great stories like that all the time. And blind people seeing like that, that's kind of weird. 5 people stepping out of a wheelchair, a 1 week-long event. I'm like mystified by that.
Wow.
So we have great evidence in human testimony. When someone stands on a stage and they're the 4-minute mile that broke through a certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness, somebody in the audience is invariably looking at them with the same health condition and going, she doesn't look vegan. She doesn't look very buffed. She doesn't look very young. She's not very stylish, but she healed herself.
Wow.
And what she's speaking is the truth. She is the example of truth. And in a moment, the consciousness of the collective changes because they become aware. Consciousness is awareness of a possibility that they were unaware of. Big footprint in consciousness in the field, and then evidence in three-dimensional reality. Balance that with the evidence that we have that's overwhelming in the scientific studies that we can do, and I can go on for another 2 hours about all the studies. Evidence in science, in research, and evidence in human testimony, evidence is the loudest voice. And I think that's what changes consciousness. I think that's what changes a collective consciousness. So there is a field of intelligence that exists beyond our senses that we're unaware of. And that unifying field of energy, it makes up more of the universe than the physical universe you and I are living in. And so then can you teach a person to get beyond their senses, to get beyond their body, to get beyond all the people and objects and things and places in their environment, to stop trying to predict the future and stop emotionally revisiting the past and labor for the present moment and become pure consciousness. If you can teach people the right information and then set up the conditions in the environment for them to experience it, the first couple of days will be choppy because it takes an enormous amount for David to face Goliath. And you got to get right up against every one of those thoughts. There are the thoughts that are always slipping by people's awareness, that talk them out of possibility. And I think when people do that, they get in the habit of stopping to believe in themselves. They get in the habit of quitting. They get in the habit of absolving their effort and using some excuse to do that. 7-day immersion, where you go all in, you start early in the morning, you go late at night, is information transformation. It's information transformation. We build information transformation. Stand as it, walk as it, sit as it, lie down as it, become it. Right? So the overcoming process we've discovered is the becoming process. And that 95% that's unconscious, you have to face off with and you got to finish it. So the thought doesn't slip by your awareness unnoticed by you when you return back into your life, where your emotional response to the same person or same circumstance causes you to no longer see the vision of your future because you're feeling the emotions of your past. You'll believe in your past more than you'll believe in your future, right? And so when we started doing all these case history studies and really looking at people's stories, it was so obvious that they were doing exactly what the people that had their spontaneous remissions were doing. They weren't doing their meditations to heal. That's not why they were doing them. They were doing their meditations to change.
Right.
And they were surrendering any aspect of their limited self to join the greater self, to lose the sense of self, separation to nothing. And that nothing turns out to be rich in something, and energy and frequency carries information. And so interacting with that energy and frequency with coherence in your nervous system begins to be translated into our biology as a reflection of wholeness. And we see it across the board over and over again. So when a person then becomes nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time, and they're in that void, in that vacuum, in that nothing, if you teach them to pay more attention to it and put more awareness on it and feel their connection to it, not only is their nervous system going to get highly organized and highly entrained, but when they connect to it and that little radio receiver at the top of the limbic brain, the pineal gland, that little radio receiver starts to transduce information into chemistry in the brain, that's when the person has that full-on sensory experience beyond their senses, and now they're in that 5D reality. And in 5D, it's all energy, it's all frequency, it's all connected, there's no separation. It's all consciousness. It's all vibration. There's nowhere to go. You're everywhere all at once. There's no separation because there's nothing to be separated from. So training people over time with information to understand that when they get to the field, if they're going to create from the field instead of from matter, like if you're creating from matter to matter, it's just going to take you a long time.
Right.
But the idea then with brain and heart coherence, brain coherence, clear intention, electrical charge in the quantum field, send the signal out. We talked about this last time. Elevated emotion, heart emotion, magnetic field, coherent heart, that's what draws the experience to you, right? If you create from the field instead of from matter, and it's not matter that's creating the field, it's the field that's creating matter, get as close to source as you can, get it close to singularity, to that 0 point field, oneness, wholeness, whatever you want to call that. And there's less separation between your consciousness and the consciousness of pure consciousness. If there's less separation between 2 points of consciousness, there's less time. You create from the field instead of from matter. You could actually shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it. And the cool part about it is when you get your nervous system tuned and there's a vibrational match and you're creating from source, why would you go anywhere to get it? If you were source, you wouldn't go anywhere to get it. You would draw it to you. And you collapse time and space. And when you do that, then the synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences, the opportunities start to prove to you that you're actually the creator of your life instead of the victim of your life. And so then people do the work, not because they have to. They do the work because they don't want the magic to end. I mean, every time I go into nothing, I go into nothing with the understanding that it's not nothing. I saw the data. The scientists do meditation. I ask them, why do you do meditation? They say, because it's medicine. This is medicine. Like
Yes.
I do the work because I'm the grad student running the trial here. I saw what it did. I'm doing it with the intention of changing my biology.
Yes.